What's up, Star Wars nerds, and welcome to another episode of Brett on Fett. On today's episode, I'll be giving a collection room update as I make room for the HasLab Ghost. Plus, I've got to say goodbye to the Black Series. Let's get to it. Welcome back to the channel. This is episode 111 of Brett on Fett, and just after Christmas, my HasLab Ghost finally arrived. Unfortunately, it arrived the day before I had to get up very early to leave for a flight to Florida, where I was gone for about 10 days. And then when I came back, I got really busy with work, and then I had some other videos I wanted to get out there, such as the Luke Skywalker review and the March Madness video, and so I just haven't had time to go back and do anything regarding the Ghost until now. Now, before I left for my trip, I did record some video to give some perspective on my collection room before the Ghost and what I had to do to accommodate the Ghost, and I'm going to give some thoughts on the Ghost as well. I'm sure you guys have seen a million videos on the Ghost by now, so I'm not doing a full review, just some quick thoughts, and I just wanted to share with you where I'm putting my Ghost and what I had to do to accommodate it. Alright guys, in case you're newer to my channel, I thought I'd give an overview of my collection room before getting the Ghost. And I apologize for the lighting because the day I recorded this, there was just no natural light. It was complete cloud cover outside, so I was having to use all artificial light. It's just really dark in here. But you can see I keep most of my carded collection on the walls. I use these IKEA book ledges. They work really nicely for like clamshells and that sort of thing, and it's almost all vintage collection. Got a little bit of retro collection there below the window, and then up at the very top row on this back wall is where I keep all of my carded Black Series that I really like. And then you can see I do have some helmets. I keep those on mounts that are intended for like motorcycle helmets. And then here is my Thrawn and Last Command Black Series sets. Really like those. There's some artwork by Rick at Left Coast Graphics. There is just a few customs and just random TVC, like Expanded Universe. All my TVC are kind of organized by media. They're grouped together by that, and then placed in order of VC numbers. There's the Jabba set or the Boba Fett Throne Room set. And then over here on this desk, I've really just got some random stuff thrown on here. It's not very well organized. We'll go back to that in a minute, but the bottom two rows of these picture ledges are reserved for my vintage Kenner figures. Obviously, I've left some space for future acquisitions, and I got a couple of placeholder customs sitting over there on the right. Going back to this table, again, it's kind of a little bit of a hot mess. I've got some Ahsoka stuff here. Of course, I've got the Mandalorian N1 Starfighter. I've got my 6-scale Clone Wars Cad Bane by Sideshow. Of course, we have that recent Moff Gideon hallway playset. There is my awesome 000 Hot Toys with BT1. Love those guys. And I got the Armorer's Forge playset over there as well with the Shriek-Hawks. So again, this table's kind of a hot mess, but all this stuff is coming off because this is where I plan on putting my Ghost. And on the opposite side, I've got my Bespin stuff. I've got my Tandy 4 play set. I've got my original 12 Kenner figures on the original stand. Love that piece. And then this section of the table is where I display my loose Black Series figures. Now, these aren't all of my loose Black Series figures. It's probably about a third of what I own loose. So some of these figures I will circulate from being stored away in the bins to being displayed on this table. And I really like these figures. Most of the figures you see here, at least at the time I bought them, we do not have in the vintage collection. Obviously, there's some here that we do. At least we do now. But that's kind of where I focused my collecting Black Series, was picking up the ones we don't have in TVC, but also just picking out the ones I just really, really like. Either I'm a big fan of that character, or the Black Series version was just really, really good, and I just had to have it. So that's kind of how I choose which Black Series figures I buy. There's just some really good ones here. And unfortunately, guys, the reason I am focusing on these Black Series figures so hard is because I've decided I've got to have the room to store the rest of my loose TVC playsets and HasLabs, and these guys are just gonna have to go. So I'm gonna have to say goodbye to my loose Black Series figures, and I've decided I'm probably going to stop altogether collecting Black Series, and I just want to grab a handful here. I just want to highlight that I just really like. Starting with this Darth Malgus, he is a standout. He was probably my favorite Black Series figure release of last year. And then, of course, this Gamorrean Guard. They did such a good job on this one. This is the re-release, but I think it's pretty much the same as the original release. They just hit this one out of the park. It is a fantastic figure. Of course, you got the Return of the Jedi Boba Fett, another excellent Black Series figure. The best Boba Fett I think we still have in the Black Series. And then I love my Stormtroopers in the Black Series, but this one's probably my favorite, and it's the Jedha Stormtrooper from Rogue One. Man, I would love to have this in TVC. It'd be so easy for them to do, to give us that pauldron, maybe give us a Sand Trooper, and then make the Jedha one with the backpack. Then there's the BT-1 droid. It is an excellent Black Series figure, and I think you can still buy the re-release of this on Pulse, by the way, along with Afra and 000. I'm pretty sure you can get those. Love the Cad Banes, but the Clone Wars one is my favorite. This is another one I really want in TVC. It is a lot different than the Book of Boba Fett version of Cad Bane, and I really need both versions in TVC. Here's the IG-88. I love the Bounty Hunters, but there's something about the paint job they did on this IG. It is so good. There are some articulation issues with this Black Series figure, but the paint job is one of the best I've seen in my opinion. I thought they really nailed that one. Also, the Empire Strikes Back version of Darth Vader in the Black Series is just a really good Vader. This came out way before the awesome TVC Vader, and so this was my favorite Vader figure before the TVC one came out. Now, to be honest, I never bought the much more recent A New Hope version of Vader for Black Series, so that one could be better than this one, but I really don't see anything wrong with the SB one. Another standout Black Series figure I've really enjoyed, and I'm not sure a lot of people did, is Ned B from Obi-Wan Kenobi. Really liked this one. It could have used a little bit of a wash, but other than that, it was a really good figure. I really love the design of this guy. He's really fun to pose. That's another one I'd love to have in TVC. Now, going back to my Bounty Hunters, I gotta grab Dengar, because I just think he's one of the most underrated Black Series figures. The mold on this figure is excellent. It is just so good. And look at the backpack. I just love the details on this thing. I'm sure there's some serious Black Series collectors that could tell me about some deficiencies with this figure, but for my money, it doesn't get any better than this for Dengar. And last but not least, as far as standouts of my loose Black Series figures, I gotta go with Paz Vizsla, the carbonized version of Paz Vizsla. This is still my favorite Black Series figure as a standalone figure. And I just love the paint job on this guy. I don't think it's dumb. I don't think this one is gimmicky. I think he looks fantastic. And I love him. And I'm going to have to keep him out in some way. So anyways, yeah, I'm just kind of sad. I'm going to have to put these away. I'm probably going to end up selling them. Just so many good figures. But I just got to have the room for my focus. And my focus is the vintage collection, guys. So unfortunately, these awesome figures are gonna have to go bye-bye. Alright guys, so I've cleared most of the stuff off of this desk, at least the TVC play sets anyway. I've kept those droids there. And here is the Ghost in the box in all of its glory. And I'm sure you guys have seen enough videos on it, but this thing is just huge. Very big box. And just to put it in perspective, I've put my Kanan Jarrus here on the desk next to it, and you can see how minuscule he looks. Now, in case you haven't seen a complete unboxing video for the Ghost, I just wanted to show y'all what the parts look like straight out of the box. So this is all the pieces taken out of the box, laid out on the table, and as you can see, Hasbro kept it very simple. It wasn't a million pieces. It's just a bunch of larger pieces that basically snap together. Assembly was very easy. And here it is, completely assembled in all its glory, looking really good. I've gone ahead and brought back some of my other toys on this desk, including my Ahsoka and the Night Troopers. I've got my Hot Toys 000 BT-1 there. I've squeezed my E-Wing over here, which I'm not a big fan of keeping it there, so I'm not sure if that's going to stay. Look at those engines, man. That's my favorite part of the Ghost, all the detailing and weathering on there. It's really a fantastic ship. I'm sure you've heard from other people that it doesn't have enough weathering, but it does have some good weathering on the sides to bring out the piping. So I think where it matters most, they did do some weathering, but the details are fantastic on this ship. I really love the look of this thing. The Phantom 2 was really well done. Yeah, maybe except for the locked in chopper head. I think that could have been handled a little bit better. But other than that, I think it's pretty awesome. Whether or not they're going to come out with the Phantom 1, I'm not sure. That would be a nice touch to just release a Phantom 1 that is compatible. Overall, a really impressive ship on the outside. Yes, it could have used a little more weathering, but it does have paint apps on the outside for damage and that sort of thing. Looking on the inside, I've basically just thrown in whatever Rebels crew figures Hasbro has given us, aside from the exclusive HasLab figures, because I am not opening those. So in the back, I've kind of thrown in stuff from the live action Ahsoka show, and the front is more the animated. Really hoping we'll get some more Rebels related figures so I can fill this whole ship up. And speaking of figures, the ones that came with the HasLab are amazing, especially the Kanan Jarrus, but I will be sending all of these figures, including the Sabine and Chopper, to CAS for grading in the near future. Alright, so as you can see, I have removed all of my loose Black Series figures, or at least all but a couple, and put all that TVC stuff that was on the wooden desk over to this side. For now, I'm not super happy with this. It's kind of temporary. I think I want to try to organize this stuff better so it flows a little better. But you can see I did keep a couple of my favorite Black Series figures. I just couldn't put them away. Got that Gam Guard, and then of course I've got my carbonized Paz Vizsla up here. Couldn't bring myself to put those away, but at least I was able to get the TVC stuff from the wooden desk over to here for now. And it's fine for now. This is all really long-term temporary anyways, because I do plan on setting up the Cantina HasLab on this desk. Alright guys, as I mentioned before, I am going to have to say goodbye to collecting Black Series. As you just saw in my video, for one thing, I just don't have the room. I had to remove my loose Black Series figure display over here to my left in order to accommodate my TVC stuff. And I'm leaving Black Series not because I'm a hater of Black Series. I love the Black Series. I am a vintage collection first collector, but not one of those TVC collectors that hate the Black Series and just think it is the nemesis of vintage collection and it can only hurt TVC. But I've never really thought of it that way. I collect how I like to collect, and I respect anyone who collects how they like to collect, regardless if it means mixing and matching scales. But I did want to share with you guys my reasons I've decided to stop collecting Black Series. The number one reason is the room. It's just not feasible for me to continue to collect both the vintage collection and the Black Series and vintage Kenner for that matter. I just don't simply have the room, and I see no point in collecting new figures that I'm ending up putting in bins, storing away. I just don't see the point in that. I've already got too many figures stored away in bins. I'm not happy with that. And so just buying more of a second line just to put it in bins makes absolutely no sense to me. So that is the number one reason. Now the other reason is when I got into collecting Black Series figures, it was because of the quality and detail of the 6-inch scale line compared to TVC. I loved TVC because I was a carded collector and I love the combination of those classic vintage style card backs with the figure, and I didn't care too much about the details of the figure itself or the articulation because I wasn't opening them back then. And so I got the Black Series because I just really admired the detail they could do with the 6-inch scale. But over time, in the last 2 or 3 years, I'd say, TVC has really made a lot of strides in the quality and the detail, and it's come to a point where I really see no difference in quality between TVC, 3 3/4 scale and the 6-inch Black Series. Hasbro's just done such a good job with getting those details, and I'm sure that goes a lot with the technology for production. And right around that time that TVC quality started picking up is when I started opening those figures and really enjoying TVC loose as well as carded. But now that I'm collecting both carded and loose TVC, and TVC has caught up to Black Series where there's virtually no real difference other than size, it's starting to come a little bit more pointless to collect both lines in my opinion. Now I brought out my Boba Fett and Han Solo in Carbonite SDCC exclusive set because this was the very first Black Series purchase I ever made. I ordered this on Entertainment Earth way back in 2013 when this thing came out. They had a number of these available outside of the convention, so I jumped on it. And the funny thing is, this was around the time I had stopped collecting for a while, And so when I got this thing, I had no idea that Black Series was a 6-inch scale. I had never heard of 6-inch scale figures. And so I remember opening this up and seeing this gigantic Boba Fett for the first time and just being like, what the hell is this? This is not 3 3/4 scale. I really had no idea. So it was kind of funny. I didn't know what to make of it. At first, I remember actually being a bit turned off because to that point, I only had 3 3/4 scale in my collection, so I just didn't know what to do with this thing. But I knew I was going to leave it in the box like this anyway, so it really wasn't a big deal. But that's how I got introduced to the 6-inch scale Black Series. Now, I've brought out the carbonized Paz Vizsla again because what's special about this figure, other than being basically my favorite Black Series figure, is that it was the first figure as an adult collector that I actually opened. And I actually did it on a video on my channel, one of my earliest videos, and really my first full figure review on my YouTube channel. And so not long after that, I actually just started opening up all my Black Series figures that I had bought up to that point to really enjoy the details and the articulation of those figures. And I've got the Gamorrean Guard here because it's just another favorite of mine from the Black Series. They really did a beautiful job on this figure. And so I'm just going to have to find a way to keep this bad boy on display along with Paz Vizsla. They really are my two favorite figures that Black Series has put out. Now, one thing I'm really going to miss about collecting Black Series figures is the ability to have figures in hand of characters we are missing in the vintage collection. And there is a ton of those, by the way, especially in new media. But I've just grabbed a handful of figures as examples that I'm talking about. Starting with this Asajj Ventress. This is one we've been needing in TVC for ages. Black Series has had this one for, I think, at least 3 years, and it's a fantastic figure. They really did a good job, and I could easily see this transferring to a 3 3/4 scale. Then there's the Darth Malak. I put this one on my top 25 March Madness. We've got Revan in TVC, so we definitely need a Malak to go with him, and the Black Series version was awesome. And a couple of Black Series figures that have really surprised me that they have not come to TVC yet is the New Republic Security Droid and Q90, both appearing in that really good episode of Mando Season 1 where they break onto the New Republic prison ship. I could say the same thing about the Migs Mayfield from Season 1 as well. That's another one I find really surprising we haven't gotten in TVC yet. And then Ned B from Obi-Wan Kenobi, I showed him earlier in my video. Again, really enjoyed this figure. And he's a really impactful droid on that series. So again, really surprising we don't have him in TVC. And then last but not least, one of my favorite troopers is this Imperial Patrol Trooper from Solo. Now here I kind of understand why TVC didn't release him because Solo really didn't do that well, and so I think they had their initial waves of Solo figures and they just kind of stopped at that point. But I would really love them to go back, revisit Solo figures, and do this Imperial Patrol Trooper. So again, this is what I'm going to miss most about the Black Series, not being able to enjoy figures that we don't have in the vintage collection yet. So I'm just going to have to wait till TVC finally gets us these guys. And so off to the plastic tubs they go. And by the way, if you're wondering how I store my figures, I use these heavy duty plastic baggies. I got them on Amazon. And for the Black Series figures, I use these 4x8. So that's 4 inches by 8 inches long, and they work perfectly. And I'll just demonstrate by putting Ned B in there to show that these are big enough. I don't like my baggies to be too big where the figures and accessories are rattling around too much. I like them to be fairly snug. And so I find that a 4x8 baggie is actually perfect. And you can see with Ned B, he fits just fine. Alright, so that's going to do it for this episode of Brett on Fett. Now I do want to let you guys know that although I don't plan on collecting Black Series figures anymore, that doesn't mean I'm never going to cover Black Series on my channel. Yes, it'll probably mean that I won't have any full reviews of figures because I won't have them in hand, but I will discuss Black Series every now and then if something piques my interest or there's just something of some significance to collecting Star Wars in general. But let me know in the comments if you are a collector of both TVC and Black Series and how you balance your collection in that manner, and have you ever thought about having to give up one or the other? Thanks for checking out this video. Thank you so much to my subscribers. Don't forget you can also follow me on Instagram. Take care, and we'll see you next time.